Welcome to the Dynamic Radiologist Podcast, where we feature leading experts in healthcare. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Brownstein.
Hello, Dr. Stephen Brownstein here, and I am the host of the Dynamic Radiologist Podcast. Through this platform, I have the great honor to interview top leaders in health and in business to discuss what they are doing to change the world. Some of the amazing guests I've interviewed include Dr. Jeffrey Kronk, CEO of Spinal Kinetics, Smart Injury Doctors, and Smart Injury Lawyers. Dr. Mike Carberry, CEO of Advanced Medical Integration. Dr. Donald DeFabio and Howard Reese, CEO of the Teledentist. This episode is brought to you by Dynamic Medical Imaging. I started this organization 16 years ago and have experienced consistent growth and opportunity. We have the only phonar upright MRI in central and northern New Jersey. We've had patients consistently coming to our center from over 20 miles away. Over 25% of our patients are either claustrophobic or have failed to have their MRIs completed in a closed unit. They have come here to have their studies performed in the phonar upright open MRI. We've had over 3,000 doctors from New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania refer their patients to us. What is really telling, though, is that those same doctors who referred their family and friends have come here themselves to have their own studies done. Please check out our testimonial comments and interviews on our website, www.dynamicmedicalimaging.com, and see for yourself what your fellow patients have said about their great experience at Dynamic Medical Imaging. Our second sponsor today is Spinal Kinetics, a company I started over 10 years ago. We help medical providers of all specialties evaluate for the presence, location, and severity of spinal ligament injuries. If you do stress radiographs in any format, then you can send them to our trained doctors who use our special technology. Spinal Kinetics developed a technology called CRMA, or Computerized Radiographic Mensuration Analysis, which is an advanced X-ray measurement technology to accurately measure the exact abnormal motion problems that occur with a spinal ligament injury. If you have any questions, go to www.thespinalkinetics.com or email us at support@thespinalkinetics.com. Well, today I had the great opportunity to interview one of my good friends, Dave Wachtel, who's the founder and CEO of Multus Medical. And we'll get into Multus Medical, but Dave, tell us your backstory, your background.
So I'm a lawyer by trade, licensed in Arizona, Washington, and Oregon. I have been in practice now 32 years. My practice exclusively is in the area of personal injury, which includes auto, slip and fall, products liability, and medical malpractice. I'm a trial lawyer, and I've had some successes outside of the law, including a medical funding company that eventually was acquired by a publicly traded company. I have Multus Medical, and now actually, because of the artificial intelligence involved with Multus Medical, I've got another artificial intelligence company that we think will impact upon cloud computing usage.
That's great. So Multus Medical, Multus Imaging. Tell us about the company, how it came about, and what it's all about.
Sure. Well, we as lawyers historically have sought out the ability to objectify injuries. Cases resolve where they're objective injuries. X-ray with a fracture. Anybody can see that. Anybody can recognize that. Anybody can understand that. So historically, there have been it's been difficult to establish to either an insurance adjuster, mediator, trier of fact, what an MRI shows. So we decided that we'd put together a company that would enable the average person to be able to comprehend what their MRI results are. And we took a number of years in research and development had beta testing and rollout, and now we're in third and fourth iteration of the software, and in a significant number of the MRI facilities across the country.
That's great. Yes, as a radiologist, we're asked to interpret MRI studies, and there's been a number of studies where there's been intra-observer variation in interpreting MRIs, because it's a matter of interpretation. Somebody may call it a bulge, some may call it a herniation. A lot has to do with definitions and terminology. Up until 2004, there was no standard nomenclature on lumbar herniations. What's a bulge? What's a protrusion? What's an extrusion? And in cervical spine, there's still no standard nomenclature. So that's part of the problem. And it's when a doctor does review of findings where he goes over the MRI findings with the patient, at times it's easy, times it's more difficult, but certainly having a 3D rendering of it, everybody's used to looking at 3D images now. It's, the new world where everything's animated, everything's three-dimensional, and it allows the doctor to better explain what's wrong with the patient and help direct further care, get more buy-in that they follow the treatment regimen. So on a medical end, it's certainly useful as a teaching tool to get the patient more informed about the extent of their injuries. And obviously on the legal end, radiology and what you do is a demonstrative science that you have to be able to demonstrate to the jury, the judge, the injuries. So you came up with Multus Medical, which does 3D MRI renderings. Do you have any samples that you want to show?
Well, actually, I don't have a screen share ready to go. Sorry, this morning, Dr. Brownstein, but okay. we can on our website, multusmedical.com, MULTUS, which is many in Latin. There are adequate number of samples, both the 3D rendering as well as some surgical animations, which we haven't talked about. When a physician orders a 3D rendering contemporaneous with an MRI, if the study is positive, what the physician receives is a storyboard 3D rendering of the MRI, where it stacks the slices axially and sagittally and creates a true and accurate rendering. They get the key still images, and then finally, what's really dramatic and what physicians have raved about is the interactive viewer. So, for example, if it's a cervical spine study, the interactive viewer allows the physician to manipulate the spine, the patient's spine, and discs, such that they can zoom in and zoom out. They can rotate. They can look at any angle they'd like. They can remove vertebral body. They can focus on an individual disc. It's really a magnificent tool that allows a physician to demonstrate visually what the MRI results are based upon official reading.
Oh, that's great. So what we'll do is you'll send us some cases that I can send to my support team, and then they'll incorporate it into the podcast either directly or as links, so people viewing the podcast can go directly to those links to see the images and see what we're talking about.
Yeah, and the demonstrations that we'll provide, of course, are not are some actual patients, but without information of who those patients are, so as to be able to protect identity and be HIPAA compliant. When a study is provided to a physician, it's through encrypted email, passcoded, HIPAA compliant, so that the physician's the patient's information is well protected. And then similarly, if it's a personal injury claim, which oftentimes is such the case, that same encrypted email is provided to the attorney. A portal can be set up for the attorney and physician if there are a significant number of studies ordered on a regular and recurring basis. And then finally is the attorney can provide that study by copy and pasting the address and providing passcode to an insurance adjuster, mediator, and the client themselves or the patient themselves can get access to their own 3D rendering and show their spouse or another loved one to help them understand what they're truly going through. There are a lot of medical studies these days that show that the patients that are making truly informed medical decisions do a lot better in terms of outcome. Historically, patients have had to simply rely upon what their physicians have to say, as opposed to, having a comprehension independently. And this enables a patient to really make a quality and informed medical decision because they can visualize that MRI result.
No, it's a lot easier for them to see what's wrong with them with the 3D rendering than if you sent them the MRI disc. Most of the time, they don't know what they're looking at. So, how does the Multus animations help, pre-litigation and litigation?
So, should a physician order it, again, it becomes part and parcel of the medical claim and can be offered as a medical cost. There's a CPT code 76377 that's billed on a HCFA by and through either the MRI facility or through Multus, and that's a $1,200 cost, and that is then submitted part and parcel with the 3D rendering come time frame of demand, and just like the layperson, that is the patient who can't comprehend per se the MRI result unless they're properly trained. An insurance adjuster really doesn't understand. So this gives an opportunity, by and through the attorney, to present that MRI 3D rendering to the insurance adjuster, so the insurance adjuster can get, hey, I understand why this patient needed this epidural. I understand why this patient needed this arthroscopic evaluation. I understand why this patient needed this ablation procedure, because I can see as plain on the nose on my face the abnormality, the objective finding, and I can now appreciate and accept what the physician offered and what the patient followed through with. So we are seeing lots of lawyers making sure that their clients ordering physicians are actually pursuing the 3D rendering because, again, it gives the patient the understanding, and most importantly, it gives the attorney the tool that they need to resolve this claim, hopefully short of litigation. Insurance adjusters aren't looking to necessarily screw anybody, but rather they just want to have evidence to substantiate payment on a claim. And this really gives that objective visual tool that's been lacking historically.
So has the images, Multus cases been presented in court? And
yeah, they're actually, the very first trial was a comparison study. This was not a unique opportunity, but not as common as just an individual MRI, where the patient had some prior complaint before a fall and had an MRI, and then had a fall and a subsequent MRI. And we ran side-by-side comparison, 3D rendering of those two MRIs. And that was introduced and displayed to the jury in a Houston trial. And the jury understood and could see the distinction between the two. And then the physician, of course, was able to establish that the symptoms after the fall were different than those before, and substantiated with the new findings as opposed to the old. And it was a 7-figure award, which the attorney was tremendously pleased. It's been utilized in mediation and other hearings across the country to great success.
Okay. So has it passed the Daubert and Fry challenge? As far as
the answer is yes. And the reason being is that this is a true and accurate depiction. And our radiologist will substantiate that for any testifying physician on behalf of a plaintiff and lay the foundation that is necessary to establish that it is a true and accurate rendering of that patient's results.
That's great, because that's the biggest thing that we're asked, with our company, Smile Kinetics, has it been, brought into court? Has it been allowed into court? And, luckily, we had one case in New York that I testified, and so the spinal kinetics, the CRMA was brought into court. So that's one of the objections that I get, and I'm sure you've been asked, is it admissible in court? And you're saying that and more times it is, and it's only going to be more. It's probably going to be close to the standard of care as far as both medical and legal, to be able to fully document the injury, explain it to the patient, explain it to whoever needs to know about the extent of injuries.
Well, this is verified and established by a CPT code, which government creates. So that certainly adds a significant amount of credibility. It's not as though we're reinventing the wheel. Yes, we're reinventing the wheel, and that we've provided a tool that didn't exist before. But the government recognizes and acknowledges, as do the insurance companies daily, that this is a legitimate medical assistance.
That's great. So how would a doctor or attorney order 3D rendering or surgical animation?
It's really simple. Assuming that the MRI facility is participating in the community, all they have to do is write on their script, or if it's an electronic script, add to the electronic script 3D rendering if positive. We will likely already have a closed connection VPN between Multus and the MRI facility that allows for the free flow yet protected. The free flow of the information that's adequately protected. And it's simple as that. And then the prescribing physician will, again, promptly receive that encrypted email with the 3D rendering once complete.
That's great. We've done several cases with you, and your team is excellent. Everybody that works with you and your company, they're top notch. They really care about what they do. And they'd like to have a voice in the case, that the patient gets a fair and just award, and more importantly, get the proper treatment, because that's the name of the game, is for doctors to get patient better. And once they hit maximum medical improvement, the attorney's job is to get full, fair and just award. This allows the attorney to better represent to everybody the full extent of their client's injuries, and it's certainly a welcome tool for every personal injury attorney or work comp attorney to use. Otherwise, it's almost, you could almost say that they're doing an injustice to their client by not using the tool.
Yeah, I think it should be part and parcel on every positive claim, assuming that there's the coverage available. Sometimes we run into a limitation where there's not enough money for any medical expense, let alone the 3D rendering. In addition to the 3D rendering, though, we have another tool that you may not be aware of, and that's a surgical animation. We were asked, hey, can you take the actual MRI result, the 3D rendering result, and superimpose it into a surgical animation for attorneys to be able to present time frame of demand or in litigation. And that unbelievable aid or tool is now also available. So if a patient undergoes a 2-level discectomy infusion, and the attorney wants to be able to demonstrate patient-specific MRI data superimposed into a surgical animation, that's readily available now by and through our company as well.
No, that's great. So you'll send me a couple of samples of that so we can post.
Absolutely.
Because it's just amazing how far through the use of computers we can better demonstrate and represent the client patient in their injury case. It's I've been doing this for a long time, and when I first saw the images, it literally blew me away. I said, I got to get involved, and then COVID hit, and so we're going to get back involved. But as just mentioned, a small world. One of my attorney friends last night emailed me a case that he wanted me to review with him, and it had Multus Medical. I said, talk about serendipity. So timing's everything. And I text the attorney. I said, as soon as this podcast gets published, I'll forward to him, because one, it'll edify you and your company, but more importantly, it edify him that he's bringing the best tools to his clients to get a fair and just award. So it serves many masters, but the main master, it serves as truth. The truth in finding out exactly what's wrong with the patient or client, and allowing the doctor to do his job and the attorney do their job and the patient do their job by following what both the doctor says as far as treatment plan and the attorney says as far as doing what you're supposed to be doing, showing up for IMEs and doing the stuff that hold up their end of the bargain. But like I said, I feel it's an invaluable tool that has to be used more and used properly. And I know the way you set it up is you want it to be used by the right doctors, the right attorneys, for the right patients, for the right reason, and not get abused, and then it wouldn't help anybody. So, again, the case has to be a positive case, and it has to be a case where the rendering will significantly help the doctor explain what's wrong to the patient, and also help the attorney explain what's wrong with his client to whoever he has to talk to, whether it's a judge, whether it's a jury, whether it's an insurance adjuster. Everybody wants the same thing: what's best for the patient or client.
Yeah, I appreciate this platform. We're doing our best to spread the word as much as possible. It's hard to reach thousands upon thousands of attorneys and physicians across the country. It takes time to get that word out. So, this type of platform and any other, of course, is greatly appreciated. You're right. MRIs don't lie. And nor do the 3D renderings. So it's an objective. We don't have to rely upon the patient to say, hey, what's wrong with you? But rather we can actually see what it is. So we again, greatly appreciate the message that you're helping to spread. And you're right. This will be adopted in we think the not so distant future as pretty much standard of care on MRI.
No, I think so. And one of the things I'll talk to Dr. Cronk, who's CEO of my company, Spinal Kinetics, about getting on another podcast with you, because Jeff does probably 3 or 4 podcasts a month for webinars. And we have probably 400 or 500 doctors tune in, mostly chiros, but some attorneys. And he also has 2 online courses, Smart Injury Doctors and Smart Injury Lawyers. So I can see this being, even though it's not spinal kinetics, it's really the same thing. It's being able to document the full extent of injuries, whether it's disc connective tissue injury, such as an MRI, or non-disc connective tissue spinal ligaments. They're both injured similarly during a motor vehicle accident, acceleration, deceleration injury. And, it's important to be able to properly diagnose these injuries. Excuse me. So who pays for the 3D rendering or animations currently?
In those states where there's personal injury protection on an automobile accident, the client or patient's own personal injury protection covers the expense. In jurisdictions where there's a pure tort fault-based system, it's done on a lien or a letter of protection, which means just like the MRI that is ordered where there's no health insurance or there's no qualifying health insurance, it can be an outstanding expense until the client or patient's legal claim is resolved. Can also be submitted to Major Med, though we've not historically done that, because for the vast majority of the time, this has been ordered in the legal medical setting as opposed to strictly medical setting. Though we do have some patients who have asked and we've complied with cash pay and health insurance and other ones.
Okay, great. So the CPT code that's used to bill the insurance companies?
76377.
76377.
That's it.
Okay. So,
And I'm assuming I've cited it correctly. It's early morning here, but just the same, I'm pretty sure that's the one.
okay, great. So, obviously, most of the people listening to this podcast are going to be in New Jersey here, so they can get hold of me if they need this 3D rendering or MRI. And we're at 908-687-2552. If they have any questions, they can ask to talk to Dr. Brownstein. I own the center. And outside New Jersey, what's the best way that they can get hold of you to direct them to some imaging centers that may be using you?
Easiest way is to just send an inquiry through the Multus Medical .com website. Let me see if I can come up with the actual direct line for Multus as well. And while I'm looking this up, is the attorneys also, if it was not ordered specifically by the physician, an attorney can still reach out and order a 3D rendering specifically from us, from Multus. Specifically from Multus. And it becomes a legal cost as opposed to medical cost. And the difference, though, is that the attorney can no longer actually present this into evidence as a hearsay exception document, but rather can simply only display it in front of the jury. And it's funny because I don't actually have the Multus direct line on my cell, so I'm going to text somebody real quick and get it. But the website again is Multus, MULTUS medical.com.
We can always put it into the description with the podcast.
I should get it within the next 10 or 15 seconds. If we have another question, if you're wrapping up, then yeah, we can add it to the podcast visually. So
you mentioned that you're working on something else besides Multus as an offshoot of the AI. Are you at liberty to divulge what you're working on, or is it still?
No, sure, I am. But and by the way, the phone number for Multus is 480-702-1182. Again, 480-702-1182. Yeah, it deals with cloud-based computing. Companies that use AWS or one of their competitors. Everybody's trying to minimize those costs, and we figured out a way to create an artificial intelligence predictive network that will allow stateless containerized softwares, API usage, robots and workers to be able to effectively utilize the cloud as opposed to have dormant time and still pay for it. It's really a mind-boggling and hopefully industry impacting project.
That sounds above my level of expertise. I'll stick to reading MRIs. But...
Well, I can't create the code for a segment or injury bot for Multus, but I certainly can see the results thanks to the tremendous team that put it together.
No, you have a great team. Tom. I talked to Tom, and he's such a mensch. He's such a good guy, and you too. We don't get to talk that often, but I truly appreciate the time that you spent here and getting to know you a little bit better and really buying into the vision that you have, because basically we're on the same path. We want the same outcome. And
absolutely my pleasure, Doctor. Really, really very kind words and kind of you to again offer your time up to me.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my job. It's my duty to get this information out, because everybody needs to know exactly what's wrong with them. One of our making lives better. That's what a doctor's job is, to properly diagnose, properly treat, help people get on with their lives, make their lives better. And although we can't correct everything, but in order to correct it, we have to find out what's wrong. And through our companies collectively together, we're on the same mission. And I couldn't be happier to call you and Tom good friends and good people. And you're doing a great job. And truly, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
Outstanding. Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to the Dynamic Radiologist Podcast. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.